The auctioneer's gavel came down with a thunderous crack that silenced the rowdy saloon. Amelia O'Connor's heart hammered against her ribs as she stood trembling on the makeshift stage, her wrists bound with coarse rope that bit into her skin. It was 1873 in Nebraska City, Nebraska, and she had just become property to the highest bidder. "Sold for $300 to Mr. Hargrove," the auctioneer bellowed, his voice carrying over the murmurs and jeers of the crowd. Leander Dawson leaned against the far wall of the saloon, his weathered Stetson pulled low over his eyes as he watched the spectacle unfold. His jaw clenched tight as the wealthy cattle baron, Edgar Hargrove, made his way to the front, a triumphant smirk splitting his bearded face. "Wait," Leander called out, pushing away from the wall. The room fell silent as he strode forward, spurs jingling with each deliberate step. His voice, though quiet, carried across the now hushed saloon. "My heart bids higher." Edgar Hargrove turned, his face flushing with anger. "This ain't no church social, Dawson. Money talks here." Leander's eyes never left Amelia's face as he reached into his vest pocket and withdrew a small leather pouch. $350, he said, tossing the pouch onto the auctioneer's table. The coins spilled out, glinting in the lamplight. The auctioneer looked nervously between the two men. Everyone in Nebraska City knew of the bad blood between Leander Dawson and Edgar Hargrove. It had been brewing for years, ever since Hargrove had tried to run Leander's small ranch into the ground. "Well, Mr. Hargrove," the auctioneer prompted, "do you wish to counter the bid?" Hargrove's face contorted with rage. "400, he spat. Leander reached into his boot and pulled out another small pouch. 500, he countered, his voice steady. It was nearly everything he had. Amelia watched the exchange with wide, terrified eyes. She had arrived in Nebraska City just 3 weeks prior, answering an advertisement for a schoolteacher position, only to discover upon arrival that it had been a cruel ruse. The stagecoach driver had delivered her straight to Hargrove's associate, who had seized her belongings and imprisoned her in a small room above the saloon until tonight's auction. Hargrove's face twisted. "You can't afford her, Dawson. Everyone knows you're one bad season away from losing that pathetic plot of land you call a ranch." 600, Leander said, removing his pocket watch his father's last gift to him before he died. The crowd gasped. It was an enormous sum, especially from a man of Leander's modest means. Hargrove hesitated, his greedy eyes calculating. Finally, he sneered. "She ain't worth that much. You've been hoodwinked, Dawson." He turned on his heel and stormed out of the saloon, slamming the batwing doors behind him. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Sold. To Mr. Leander Dawson for $600. He banged his gavel once more. Leander approached the stage, his heart hammering as he looked up at Amelia. Her auburn hair was in disarray, her green eyes filled with unshed tears, but there was a defiance in the set of her chin that made something stir inside him. "Miss," he said softly, extending his hand to help her down from the platform. "My name is Leander Dawson. I own a small cattle ranch about 5 miles outside of town. I promise you no harm will come to you." Amelia looked at his outstretched hand, then into his eyes, calm, steady blue eyes that held no malice or lust, only concern. "Why?" she whispered. "Because no person should be sold like cattle," he replied simply. "I'd be obliged if you'd allow me to escort you to my ranch for the night. Tomorrow I'll take you wherever you wish to go." The auctioneer interrupted. "Mr. Dawson, you need to sign the papers. She's legally yours now." Leander's jaw tightened. "Burn your papers. She belongs to no one but herself." He turned back to Amelia. "Will you come with me, Miss O'Connor?" she supplied, her voice barely audible. "Amelia O'Connor." "Miss O'Connor," he repeated, tipping his hat slightly. "I give you my word as a gentleman that you'll be safe with me tonight and free to go your own way come morning." Amelia hesitated only a moment before placing her trembling hand in his. His fingers were calloused but gentle as he helped her down. As they walked through the saloon, the crowd parted, some men eyeing them with curiosity, others with thinly veiled contempt. Outside, the night air was crisp and cool after the stuffiness of the saloon. Leander led her to a sturdy bay gelding tied to the hitching post. I'm afraid it's not the most comfortable way to travel for a lady, he said apologetically, but thunder here is steady and sure-footed, even in the dark. Amelia glanced back at the saloon, then up at the star-filled sky. Freedom was so close she could taste it, but she had no money, no belongings, and nowhere to go. "Mr. Dawson," she began hesitantly, "I have nothing with which to repay your kindness." Leander shook his head firmly. "I don't expect repayment, Miss O'Connor. What happened in there?" He trailed off, jaw tightening. It wasn't right. He untied his horse and mounted, then extended his hand down to her. Amelia took a deep breath and allowed him to pull her up behind him. She held onto the back of the saddle, trying to maintain a proper distance. "You'll want to hold on to me," Leander advised. "The trail can be rough in places." Reluctantly, Amelia placed her hands lightly on his waist. As they set off, the rocking motion of the horse forced her to grip more firmly. She could feel the solid warmth of him through his cotton shirt, smell the leather and sunshine scent of him. They rode in silence for a time, the only sounds the steady rhythm of thunder's hooves and the occasional night bird calling. The prairie stretched around them, bathed in silver moonlight. "I came to Nebraska City to be a teacher," Amelia finally said, her voice small against the vastness of the night. "There was an advertisement in a Boston newspaper. When I arrived, a man claiming to represent the school board met me. He said there had been a change of plans, that the schoolhouse wasn't ready yet and I would need to stay at a boarding house, but he took me to that saloon instead." Her voice broke. "They locked me in a room, took all my things." Leander's back stiffened beneath her hands. "Hargrove," he muttered. "He's been bringing women west under false pretenses for years. The law turns a blind eye because he owns half the county." "How did you know to be there tonight?" she asked. Leander was quiet for a moment. "I didn't. I was in town for supplies and heard talk at the general store about an auction at the Silver Spur. Thought they meant horses." His voice hardened. "By the time I realized what was happening, you were already on that stage." They crested a small rise, and in the valley below, Amelia could make out a modest cabin with a barn and corral beside it. A small creek glinted like silver ribbon in the moonlight. "That's my place," Leander said. "It ain't much, but it's mine, free and clear." As they approached, a dog began to bark, and soon a large black and white border collie came bounding to meet them. "That's Patch," Leander said as they dismounted. "He's all bark, no bite." The dog sniffed Amelia curiously before giving her hand a friendly lick. Despite everything, she found herself smiling. Leander led her to the cabin, lighting a lamp just inside the door. The interior was simple but neat: a table with 2 chairs, a small cook stove, shelves with books, a curtained-off area that she presumed was his bedroom. "You can take the bed," he said, gesturing toward the curtain. "I'll bunk out in the barn tonight." "Oh, I couldn't," Amelia began to protest. "Please," Leander interrupted gently. "You've been through enough. Get some rest. There's a wash basin behind that screen if you want to freshen up. I'll bring in your bathwater in the morning if you'd like a proper bath." Amelia blinked back sudden tears at his kindness. "Thank you, Mr. Dawson." "Leander," he corrected with a small smile. "Only the bank manager calls me Mr. Dawson, and that's usually when he's fixing to give me bad news." He moved to a chest and pulled out a clean shirt. "Here, it'll be too big, but it might serve as a nightdress." After he left for the barn, Amelia stood alone in the quiet cabin. She moved slowly to the wash basin, removing the dirty dress she'd been wearing for days. Using the cold water and the sliver of soap beside the basin, she cleaned herself as best she could, then slipped on Leander's shirt. It smelled of sunshine and cedar and fell almost to her knees. Behind the curtain, she found a narrow bed with a patchwork quilt. She slid beneath it, expecting to lie awake with fear and uncertainty, but exhaustion claimed her almost immediately. She dreamed of being chased, of running through endless prairie grass with nowhere to hide. Just as hands were about to grab her, she jerked awake, heart pounding. Pale dawn light filtered through the cabin's single window. Amelia rose and dressed in her old clothes, grimacing at their state. She found a comb on a small shelf and did her best to bring order to her tangled hair. When she emerged from behind the curtain, she found Leander already inside, stoking the cookstove fire. "Good morning," he said, straightening. "I hope you slept well." Better than I expected to, she admitted. Thank you again for your kindness, Mr. Leander, he nodded. I've got coffee brewing and can fix some eggs and bacon if you're hungry. Please let me, Amelia insisted, moving toward the stove. It's the least I can do. Leander hesitated, then stepped aside. Much obliged. While Amelia prepared breakfast, Leander brought in buckets of water and heated them on the stove. There's a washtub behind the barn screen on the porch, he told her. I thought you might like a proper bath after breakfast, and he hesitated. I have some clothes that might fit you. They belong to my sister. Amelia looked up in surprise. Your sister, a shadow crossed his face. Sarah, she passed 3 winters ago, influenza. I'm so sorry, Amelia said softly. Leander cleared his throat. She was about your size. The clothes are packed away, but they're clean and whole. Better than what you have now, I reckon. After breakfast, Leander showed her to the screened-off portion of the porch where a large copper tub sat. He placed the last bucket of hot water beside it, along with a cake of lavender soap and a towel. Take your time, he said. I'll be tending to the stock in the barn. The bath was glorious. Amelia sank into the hot water with a sigh, feeling the tension and grime of the past weeks wash away. She scrubbed her hair and skin until they felt new again. Afterward, she dressed in the clothes Leander had provided, a simple blue calico dress that fit reasonably well, along with undergarments and thick woolen stockings. There was even a pair of boots that only pinched a little at the toes. When she emerged from behind the screen, she found Leander waiting at a respectful distance, his back to her. I'm decent, she called softly. He turned, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes, surprise, perhaps, or admiration. The clothes suit you, he said simply. Thank you for lending them to me. They're yours now, he said firmly. Sarah would have wanted them used, not packed away gathering dust. Amelia touched the fabric of the dress, moved by his generosity. You mentioned taking me wherever I wish to go today, she said hesitantly. The truth is, I have nowhere to go. My family is all gone, and I spent the last of my savings on the stage-coach ticket to Nebraska City. Leander was quiet for a moment. What were your plans before? He trailed off. I was to be the new schoolteacher, she said. I taught at a small school outside Boston for 2 years after completing my own education. When I saw the advertisement for a position out west that paid twice what I was earning, it seemed like providence. Her mouth twisted bitterly. I was a fool. No, Leander said firmly. The fools are those who would prey on decent folk trying to make an honest living. He seemed to come to a decision. Miss O'Connor, Amelia, I have a proposition for you if you're willing to hear it. She nodded cautiously. This ranch needs more hands than just mine to prosper. I've been getting by, but only just, and I've been thinking for some time that the children hereabouts need proper schooling. The nearest school is in Nebraska City, too far for daily travel. He gestured toward the hillside beyond the cabin. I've got timber cut for expansion. Was planning to add on to this place, but I could just as easily build a small schoolhouse. Amelia stared at him, scarcely daring to hope. Are you offering me employment as a teacher? I can't pay much at first, he warned. But you'd have room and board here until we can build you a proper place of your own. And I believe there are enough families within riding distance who would contribute to a teacher's salary once word gets out. But why would you do this? She asked. You don't know me. Leander looked away, his expression thoughtful. My sister wanted to be a teacher, never got the chance. He met her eyes again. And I believe in doing what's right. This territory needs civilizing influences like schools and churches if it's ever to be more than a lawless frontier. Amelia considered his offer. It seemed too good to be true after the nightmare of the past weeks, but there was something steady and trustworthy in Leander Dawson's manner that made her inclined to believe him. I accept, she said finally. On one condition, he raised an eyebrow, which is that you allow me to work for my keep until the school is established. I can cook, clean, mend, and I'm willing to learn whatever other tasks need doing. A smile touched the corner of his mouth. Those aren't exactly skills I'd turn down, he admitted. But you'll be doing me the favor, Miss O'Connor, not the other way around. Amelia, she corrected with a small smile of her own. If we're to be partners in this venture, you should use my given name. He nodded, that ghost of a smile still playing around his lips. Amelia then. They spent the morning making plans. Leander showed her the timber he had cut and the site where he thought the schoolhouse might stand, a gentle rise with a view of the prairie, sheltered by a small grove of cottonwoods. "It's beautiful," Amelia said, her eyes scanning the horizon. "The children would have room to play, and the trees would provide shade in summer. And shelter from winter winds," Leander added. "Nebraska winters can be brutal." As they walked back toward the cabin, Amelia ventured a question that had been on her mind. "You mentioned there are families nearby," Leander nodded. "The Millers have 4 children, ranging from 6 to 12. The Hendersons have twins who must be about 8 by now. The Jorgensens have 3 little ones, though the oldest is probably only 5. He counted on his fingers. "The Winstons, the Coopers, the Rileys all have children of school age, and there are a few bachelor homesteaders who have recently sent for mail-order brides. There'll be more children soon enough." "It sounds promising," Amelia said thoughtfully. "Though we'd need books, slates, perhaps a blackboard. We can send away for proper supplies," Leander assured her. "In the meantime, I've got a fair collection of books, not textbooks, but good literature nonetheless." Amelia glanced at him with new interest. "You're a reading man, then?" A faint flush colored his tan cheeks. "Winter nights are long out here. Reading passes the time." Back at the cabin, Amelia insisted on preparing lunch while Leander tended to some fence repairs. She found the pantry modestly stocked with essentials: flour, sugar, coffee, beans, and preserved vegetables from what must have been last year's garden. Outside, she discovered a small chicken coop with half a dozen hens, which yielded 4 fresh eggs. She prepared a simple meal of cornbread and bean soup, with sliced apples for sweetness. When Leander returned, the surprise and pleasure on his face at finding a hot meal waiting made something warm unfurl inside her chest. "This is mighty fine," he said appreciatively after his first few bites. "Been a while since I had home cooking this good." "Do you always cook for yourself?" she asked. He nodded. "Since Sarah passed, before that we shared the duties." "No wife?" The question slipped out before she could stop it, and Amelia immediately flushed. "I'm sorry, that's terribly forward of me." But Leander didn't seem offended. "No wife," he confirmed. "Came close once, but she decided life out here was too harsh, went back east to marry a shopkeeper." There was no bitterness in his tone, only a matter-of-fact acceptance. After lunch, Leander showed her around the rest of the property: the vegetable garden now gone to seed, the small orchard with a dozen apple trees, the creek that provided water even in the driest months. "It's a good place," he said as they stood looking over the land. "Not grand, but it provides. I run about 50 head of cattle on the north pasture. Not enough to make me rich, but enough to keep me in coffee and bullets." He glanced at her. "If you're staying on, though, I should warn you that Hargrove won't take kindly to it. He's used to getting what he wants." Amelia's stomach tightened at the mention of the cattle baron. "Do you think he'll cause trouble?" Leander's expression hardened. "It's likely, but this is my land and you're under my protection now. I won't let him harm you." The fierce certainty in his voice was reassuring, but also troubling. "I don't want to bring danger to your door, Leander. Hargrove and I have history," he admitted. "This would just be one more chapter in an old story." Before she could press him for details, the sound of approaching horses drew their attention. 3 riders were coming up the trail toward the ranch, 2 men and a woman. "The Millers," Leander identified them, raising his hand in greeting. "Probably heard I was back from town and wanted to trade news." Amelia suddenly felt self-conscious. What would these people think of her presence here? As if reading her thoughts, Leander said quietly, "John Miller is a good man, as is his wife, Martha. They won't judge." The Millers dismounted at the hitching post, and Leander moved to welcome them. Amelia hung back, uncertain. "Leander Dawson, you've been holding out on us." Martha Miller exclaimed, her keen eyes immediately taking in Amelia's presence. She was a stout woman with kind eyes and graying hair tucked beneath a practical bonnet. "Only just got back from town yesterday, Martha," Leander replied easily. He beckoned Amelia forward. "This is Miss Amelia O'Connor. She's agreed to stay on and teach school for the children hereabouts. Amelia, this is John and Martha Miller and their eldest boy, Thomas." Martha's eyes widened with delight. "A school teacher." Well, isn't that just what we've been praying for? She rushed forward to take Amelia's hands in hers. You are most welcome, Miss O'Connor, most welcome indeed. John Miller, a weathered man with a gray-streaked beard, touched the brim of his hat respectfully. Madam, that's mighty fine news. Our young'uns have had precious little schooling since we came west. Thomas, a gangly youth of perhaps 15, shuffled his feet shyly but nodded a greeting. We're planning to build a proper schoolhouse, Leander explained, gesturing toward the hill. Up yonder where the cottonwoods are. A fine spot, John approved. And when do you aim to start building? As soon as possible, Leander replied. I've got the timber cut already. Well, you just say the word and we'll be here to help, John offered immediately. I expect the other families will pitch in too once they hear. Martha was still beaming at Amelia. You must come to supper on Sunday after church, she insisted. All the neighbors gather at our place. It'll be the perfect opportunity to introduce you around. Amelia glanced at Leander, who gave a small nod of encouragement. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. I'd be delighted. Martha, please, the older woman corrected warmly. We're not formal folk out here. As the Millers prepared to leave, Martha drew Amelia slightly aside. I don't mean to pry, dear, she said in a lowered voice, but is your arrangement with Leander proper? Amelia's cheeks heated. Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm to be the teacher only. Mr. Dawson has been a perfect gentleman. Martha patted her hand. I never doubted it. Leander Dawson is one of the finest men in these parts. I just wanted to be sure you weren't uncomfortable. She hesitated. There's talk in town, you know, about an auction at the Silver Spur. Amelia's blood ran cold. You needn't say anything, Martha assured her quickly. What matters is that you're safe now, and if anyone gives you any trouble, you just send word to me. There was steel beneath her motherly exterior. The women out here look after our own. After the Millers departed, Leander and Amelia walked back to the cabin in thoughtful silence. They seem like good people, Amelia finally said. The best, Leander agreed. Salt of the earth. He glanced at her. What did Martha have to say to you in private? Amelia hesitated, then decided on honesty. She wanted to be sure our arrangement was proper. To her surprise, Leander chuckled. Martha Miller, guardian of frontier morality. His expression sobered. Does it concern you? What people might think. Not if they're all like the Millers, Amelia replied. But I confess I'm a bit worried about attending church on Sunday, if word of the auction has spread. You have nothing to be ashamed of, Leander said firmly. You were the victim, not the perpetrator. Even so, Amelia said quietly. In my experience, women often bear the brunt of scandal, regardless of fault. Leander was quiet for a moment. If you'd prefer, I could ask Martha to spread the word that you're my cousin come west to teach school. Amelia considered this, then shook her head. No, I won't begin my time here with a lie, however well-intentioned. The truth will serve better in the long run. He nodded, respect evident in his gaze. As you wish. That evening, they sat companionably by the fire, Leander in his chair mending a bridle, Amelia in Sarah's old rocking chair darning one of his socks. The domestic scene felt surprisingly natural, as if they'd been sharing this space for years, rather than a single day. Tell me about your sister, Amelia ventured, if it's not too painful to speak of her. Leander's hands stilled on the leather strap. Sarah was 4 years younger than me. Our parents died when she was 12. Fever took them both within days of each other. I was 16, old enough to work, so I took whatever jobs I could find to keep us together. A faint smile touched his lips. Sarah was smart, reading books from the time she could walk, always asking questions. She wanted to see everything, know everything. She sounds wonderful, Amelia said softly. She was, Leander agreed. When she was 18, I had enough saved to head west and stake a claim. She insisted on coming with me, said she'd teach the local children once we were settled. His expression darkened. But then the influenza hit during our 3rd winter here. Doctor couldn't make it through the snow in time. I'm so sorry, Amelia murmured. She could see the pain still etched in the lines around his eyes. He shook his head as if to clear away the memories. What about your family? My mother died when I was born. My father raised me alone. He was a teacher himself, taught me to love books and learning. Amelia's fingers moved mechanically, weaving the darning needle through the sock. He died 2 years ago, heart failure. I kept teaching at the school where he had taught, but when the new headmaster arrived, She hesitated. He what? Leander prompted gently. He made certain advances that I refused, she said carefully. When I threatened to report his behavior, he dismissed me. No one would hire me after that. His influence was too great. That's why the advertisement for a position out west seemed like such a blessing. She gave a bitter laugh. From one bad situation to another. Until now, Leander said quietly. Amelia looked up, meeting his steady gaze. Until now, she agreed. That night, despite Leander's protests, Amelia insisted he take the bed while she made up a pallet near the stove. You've slept in the barn for 2 nights, she argued. It's not right. I can't put a lady on the floor, he objected. We'll have to come up with a better arrangement soon, Amelia said practically. But for tonight, please, it's your bed. Reluctantly, he agreed, though she could tell he was uncomfortable with the situation. As she lay listening to the quiet of the prairie night, so different from the city noises she was accustomed to, Amelia reflected on the strange turn her life had taken. 24 hours ago, she had been waiting in terror to be sold to the highest bidder. Now she was planning a school, welcomed by neighbors, and feeling safer than she had in months. All because Leander Dawson had walked into that saloon and declared that his heart bid higher. The next few days settled into a rhythm. Amelia took over the cooking and household tasks, freeing Leander to focus on ranch work. Together, they cleared and measured the schoolhouse site, and Leander began to prepare the foundation. Word spread quickly about the new teacher. Several families rode out to meet Amelia, bringing small gifts: a jar of preserves, a bunch of late wildflowers, a hand-sewn apron. All expressed enthusiasm about the school, and several offered to contribute lumber, nails, or labor to the building effort. By Sunday, Amelia felt almost settled, though the prospect of attending church made her nervous. She wore Sarah's best dress, a lovely blue calico with white lace trim, and Leander, too, had dressed in his Sunday best, a clean shirt and vest, his dark hair slicked back with water. "You look mighty fine," he said when she emerged from behind the curtain where she now dressed. "Thank you," she replied, smoothing the skirt self-consciously. "You're quite handsome yourself." A flush crept up his neck, and he ducked his head in awkward acknowledgement. Amelia found his modesty endearing after the forward behavior of so many men she had encountered. The small church was already filled when they arrived. All conversation stopped as they entered, and Amelia felt every eye upon her. She lifted her chin and walked beside Leander to a pew near the middle of the church. Martha Miller bustled over immediately. "Amelia, dear, come sit with us." She shot a warning glance around the congregation. Everyone's so eager to meet our new teacher. The service was simple but heartfelt. The minister, a kindly older man named Reverend Parker, preached a sermon about welcoming strangers, which Amelia suspected might have been chosen specifically for her benefit. Afterward, as people filed out of the church, he made a point of introducing her formally to the congregation as the answer to our prayers for a proper teacher for our children. There were some curious looks, and Amelia caught a few whispers behind raised hands, but overall, the reception was warm. As promised, everyone gathered at the Millers' homestead for Sunday dinner, a sprawling affair with tables set up in the yard to accommodate the crowd. Amelia found herself surrounded by curious children, answering questions about what they would learn in school and when classes would begin. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and she soon forgot her nervousness in the pleasure of engaging with her future students. Leander kept a respectful distance, talking with the men about cattle prices and weather predictions, but she often felt his eyes on her. Whenever she glanced his way, he would give her a small, encouraging smile that somehow steadied her. It was late afternoon when they finally rode for home, Amelia now on a gentle mare named Daisy that the Hendersons had offered to loan her for as long as needed. "That went well, I think," she said as they rode side by side. "Better than well," Leander replied. "You charmed them all." "Hardly," Amelia laughed, "but they seem willing to give me a chance. John Miller says he'll round up the men next Saturday to start on the schoolhouse. With enough hands, we could have the framework up in a day." Amelia's heart swelled with excitement. I can hardly believe it's happening so quickly. Folks out here don't waste time once they set their minds to something, Leander explained. He hesitated, then added, there's something else. Reverend Parker mentioned that the town council in Nebraska City has been discussing the need for a school for some time. If we can prove the demand is here, there might be county funds available. That would be wonderful, Amelia exclaimed. We could buy proper textbooks, perhaps even a bell. Leander smiled at her enthusiasm. You've brought hope to this community, Amelia. People are already talking about how things are looking up. She flushed at the praise. I've done nothing yet. You've given them something to look forward to, he corrected. That's no small thing out here. As they crested the rise that overlooked Leander's ranch, they both pulled their horses to an abrupt halt. Two men on horseback were waiting outside the cabin. Even at a distance, Amelia recognized one of them, the large, imposing figure of Edgar Hargrove. Leander's expression darkened. Stay back, he said quietly. If there's trouble, ride for the Millers. I won't leave you, Amelia protested. Amelia. His voice was firm. Please. Reluctantly, she nodded, hanging back as Leander rode forward to meet the unwelcome visitors. She couldn't hear the exchange that followed, but she could see the tension in Leander's posture, the aggressive stance of Hargrove as he leaned down from his horse. After a few minutes, Hargrove and his companion wheeled their horses around and galloped away. Leander watched them go before turning to beckon Amelia forward. What did he want? She asked as she rode up beside him. Leander's jaw was tight. To inform me that I've made a powerful enemy. He dismounted and reached up to help her down. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary. He says I stole what was rightfully his. Amelia's blood ran cold. Me. Yes, Leander's eyes were hard. He claims he paid good money to bring you west and that I interfered with a legitimate business transaction. There was nothing legitimate about it, Amelia exclaimed, outraged. I was deceived, imprisoned, and sold against my will. I know, Leander said soothingly, but Hargrove has the sheriff and half the county officials in his pocket. He threatened legal action. On what grounds? Leander's expression was grim. Theft of property. Amelia felt sick. I am not property. Of course you're not, he agreed vehemently. But Hargrove is powerful and vindictive. We need to be prepared for trouble. What kind of trouble? Leander shook his head. I don't know yet. But I won't let him harm you, Amelia. I promise you that. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. It was more than just the protectiveness of a decent man toward someone in his care. There was something deeper there, something that made her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Thank you, she whispered. They went inside, the joyful mood of the day dampened by Hargrove's visit. As Amelia prepared a light supper, she noticed Leander checking his rifle and pistol, cleaning and loading them with methodical care. Do you think he would really resort to violence? She asked. Leander looked up from his weapons. I think Hargrove is a man accustomed to taking what he wants by whatever means necessary, and he's not used to being thwarted. He set the rifle aside. I don't mean to frighten you, but I want you to be prepared. From now on, don't go anywhere alone. Keep Patch with you if I'm not around. The border collie, hearing his name, thumped his tail against the floor. I feel like I've brought nothing but trouble into your life, Amelia said miserably. Leander's expression softened. That's not true. You've brought light. He seemed embarrassed by the admission. The cabin hasn't felt this much like a home since Sarah died. The simple statement touched her deeply. Still, she insisted, I don't want to be the cause of harm coming to you or this place. Hargrove and I were bound to clash eventually, Leander said. He's been trying to buy or bully his way into owning every piece of land between here and Nebraska City. I'm one of the few holdouts. Why does he want your land in particular? Water rights, Leander explained. The creek that runs through my property is one of the few year-round water sources in the area. Whoever controls it controls the best grazing land for miles around. Amelia nodded her understanding. So this is about more than just me. Much more, Leander confirmed. You're just his latest excuse to come after what he's wanted for years. That night, Amelia lay awake on her pallet, listening to the sounds of the prairie night and thinking about the growing complications of her situation. Hargrove's threats cast a shadow over the bright promise of the school and her new beginning. But even more troubling were her emerging feelings for Leander Dawson. In less than a week, he had become far more than just her rescuer or employer. She found herself watching him as he worked, admiring the strength in his hands and the quiet competence with which he approached every task. She looked forward to their evening conversations by the fire, where they discussed books or shared stories from their pasts. It was dangerous territory. She was, in essence, dependent on him for everything right now: shelter, protection, her future livelihood. It would be foolish to mistake gratitude for deeper emotions. And yet, she couldn't deny the flutter in her stomach when he smiled at her, or the way his blue eyes seemed to see straight to her soul. Morning brought a new determination. After breakfast, Amelia announced that she wanted to ride into the nearest homestead to start gathering information about her future students, their ages, current education levels, any special needs. "I'll saddle up and come with you," Leander offered immediately. "Don't you have work to do here?" She asked. "I thought you were planning to repair the north fence today." "It can wait," he said firmly. "I meant what I said about not going out alone." She wanted to protest but saw the worry in his eyes. "All right, but I intend to visit all the families this week." "I can't have you abandoning your ranch work every day." "We'll figure something out," he promised. "Maybe one of the older boys could ride with you as an escort." The days that followed settled into a new pattern. In the mornings, Amelia would ride out with Leander or one of the Miller boys to visit the families whose children would attend her school. In the afternoons, she worked on developing lesson plans and making lists of needed supplies. The evenings were spent in quiet companionship, often reading aloud to each other from Leander's small but quality collection of books. On Saturday, as promised, the men of the community gathered at dawn to begin construction on the schoolhouse. Amelia watched in amazement as the framework rose rapidly, a dozen men working together with practiced efficiency. The women had come too, setting up tables laden with food to keep the workers fed. Martha Miller stood beside Amelia, watching the activity with satisfaction. "This is how we do things out here," she said proudly. "Together." By sunset, the basic structure was complete: 4 walls, a roof, spaces cut for windows, and a door. It was simple but solid, built to withstand the prairie winds and winter snows. "It'll need finishing inside," Leander told Amelia as they rode home in the gathering dusk. "Floors, a proper stove, desks, but it's a start." "It's wonderful," she said sincerely. "I can't believe how quickly it went up." "Those men all have children who'll benefit," Leander pointed out. "It's an investment in their futures." He glanced at her. "I've been thinking. With the schoolhouse coming along, you'll be needing your own place soon. It wouldn't be proper for you to keep staying at my cabin once you're officially the teacher." Amelia's heart sank unexpectedly at the thought of leaving the cabin. "Oh, yes, of course. There's a small rise just beyond the schoolhouse," Leander continued. "I thought we might build you a cottage there. Nothing fancy, but your own place, close enough to the school but with some privacy." "That's very generous," Amelia said carefully, "but I couldn't ask you to build me a home as well as a school." "You didn't ask," Leander pointed out. "I offered, and it would be on my land still, so it's an improvement to my property." She eyed him suspiciously. "Is that the only reason?" Leander hesitated. "No," he admitted finally. "I want you to stay, Amelia, not just as the teacher, but nearby." His eyes held hers for a moment before he looked away, seemingly embarrassed by the confession. Amelia's pulse quickened. "I'd like that too," she said softly. They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, filled with unspoken possibilities. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear. As they prepared for church, Amelia felt a lightness in her step that had been missing the previous week. The schoolhouse was underway, the community had welcomed her, and there had been no further sign of Hargrove or his men. Perhaps, she thought hopefully, he had decided they weren't worth the trouble after all. That hope was shattered as they approached the church. A crowd had gathered outside, voices raised in anger. As they drew closer, Amelia could make out Hargrove's imposing figure at the center of the group, facing off against Reverend Parker. "What's happening?" she asked Leander as they dismounted. "Nothing good," he replied grimly, offering his arm to escort her forward. As they approached, they could hear Hargrove's booming voice. Harboring a thief and a liar, this woman signed a contract to work for me, then ran off with my money and property. That's not true. Amelia exclaimed, unable to hold her tongue. All eyes turned to them. Hargrove's face darkened with malice. Here she is now, the thief herself. Watch your words, Hargrove, Leander warned, his voice dangerously soft. Or what, Dawson? Hargrove sneered. Everyone here knows you stole what was rightfully mine. This woman was brought west at my expense to work in my establishments. Your establishments? Martha Miller stepped forward, her normally kind face fierce with anger. You mean your brothels? A murmur ran through the crowd. Reverend Parker held up his hands for silence. This is the Lord's day and we are about to worship. Mr. Hargrove, if you have a legal complaint, take it to the proper authorities, but I will not have discord at my church. I've already been to the authorities, Hargrove said smugly. Sheriff's got a warrant for both their arrests. He pulled a piece of paper from his vest pocket. Theft and interfering with a legal contract. John Miller pushed forward. Let me see that. He took the paper and scanned it, his expression darkening. This is dated yesterday. Sheriff Thompson didn't waste any time, did he? Almost like he had it ready and waiting. The law's the law, Hargrove said. They need to come with me now. That's not happening, Leander stated flatly, positioning himself slightly in front of Amelia. The tension in the air was palpable. Several of the men moved to stand with Leander, forming a protective barrier. You can't defy a legal warrant, Hargrove warned. That's asking for more trouble than you can handle. This isn't legal and you know it, Reverend Parker said firmly. Miss O'Connor was brought here under false pretenses. You engaged in human trafficking, Mr. Hargrove. Prove it, Hargrove challenged. I have a contract with her signature. A contract I never saw or signed. Amelia protested. Hargrove's eyes narrowed. Your word against mine, girl. And I own half this county. Not the people in it, Martha Miller declared. We stand with Miss O'Connor and Mr. Dawson. A chorus of agreement rose from the gathering. Hargrove looked around, clearly not having anticipated such unified resistance. His face flushed with anger. This isn't over, he warned, not by a long shot. He turned and stomped to his horse, mounting with surprising agility for a man of his size. You'll regret crossing me, all of you. As he rode away, the tension eased slightly, but Amelia could still feel the undercurrent of worry among the group. What does this mean? She asked Leander quietly. His expression was grim. It means Hargrove's not giving up. And he's willing to use the law or his version of it to get what he wants. You two should lay low for a while, John Miller advised. That warrant might be questionable, but Sheriff Thompson will enforce it if Hargrove pushes hard enough. We can't hide forever, Leander pointed out. No, but we can buy time to find a legal remedy, Reverend Parker suggested. I have a cousin who practices law in Lincoln. I'll write to him today. And in the meantime, Amelia asked, fear tightening her throat. Martha put a comforting arm around her shoulders. In the meantime, you stay safe. We protect our own out here. Despite the show of solidarity, church service that day was subdued. Afterward, rather than lingering for the usual Sunday socializing, Leander suggested they return directly to the ranch. We need to prepare, he told her as they rode. In case Hargrove decides to push the issue. What can we do? Amelia asked. Pack essentials, be ready to leave quickly if necessary. He glanced at her. I have a hunting cabin up in the hills. It's remote, hard to find if you don't know where to look. We could lie low there until Reverend Parker's cousin can help us sort this out legally. The thought of fleeing filled Amelia with dread. But the school, the children, will still be here when this is resolved, Leander assured her. But we need to be smart, Amelia. Hargrove is dangerous when crossed. Back at the ranch, they worked quietly to prepare gathering food, ammunition, essential clothing, and supplies. Leander pulled out maps, showing her the location of the hunting cabin and marking alternative routes. Memorize this, he instructed. In case we get separated, the seriousness in his voice frightened her. Do you really think it will come to that? Leander sighed, setting the map aside. I hope not, but Hargrove has a lot of influence. If he convinces the sheriff's office that we've defied a legal warrant, they might send a posse. He took her hands in his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "I won't let anything happen to you, Amelia. I promise you that." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Leander," she began, uncertain what she even wanted to say. He released her hands abruptly, as if burned. "I should check the horses," he muttered, turning away. Amelia watched him go, confusion and longing warring within her. In the short time she'd known him, Leander Dawson had become more important to her than she could have imagined possible. The thought of bringing danger to his door was unbearable. Perhaps, she thought with growing resolve, the best thing she could do was remove herself from the equation and spare Leander and the community further conflict with Hargrove. That night, she lay awake until Leander's breathing deepened into sleep. Quietly, she rose and dressed in the dark, gathering the few belongings she could call her own, the clothes Sarah had left, a small amount of money Martha Miller had insisted on giving her for school supplies, and a simple silver locket that had been her mother's, the only item the men in Nebraska City had overlooked when they took her belongings. She wrote a brief note explaining her decision and leaving it propped against the coffee pot where Leander would be sure to find it in the morning. Then, heart aching, she slipped out of the cabin into the cool night air. Daisy nickered softly as Amelia approached the small corral. "SHH, girl," she whispered, stroking the mare's velvety nose. "We need to be quiet." She had just finished saddling the horse when a voice spoke from the shadows. Going somewhere, Amelia whirled to find Leander leaning against the corral fence, arms crossed over his chest. She began, but words failed her. Leander stepped forward, moonlight illuminating his features. He looked tired and sad. "You were just going to disappear, leave nothing but a note." Shame washed over her. "I thought it would be easier." "Easier?" There was a rough edge to his voice. "Waking up to find you gone would be easier, for you," she clarified. "This whole situation with Hargrove, it's because of me. If I leave, go somewhere far away, you won't be in danger anymore." "And what about you?" he demanded. "Where would you go? How would you live?" "I'd find a way," she insisted, though she had no real plan beyond putting distance between herself and the trouble she'd brought. Leander took another step toward her. "You'd be alone, vulnerable, without resources or protection. How long before Hargrove or someone like him found you again?" "I survived before I met you," Amelia pointed out, though her resolve was weakening in the face of his concern. "Barely," he countered. "And now Hargrove has a personal grudge. He won't give up easily." "Which is exactly why I need to go," she said, fighting back tears. "I won't be responsible for harm coming to you or this place." Leander closed the distance between them, his hands gentle as they cupped her face. "Amelia," he said softly, "don't you understand? It's already too late for that." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I mean that you leaving now wouldn't protect me from anything. Hargrove would still come, and even if he didn't." His thumbs brushed lightly over her cheekbones. "The harm would already be done." "I don't understand," she whispered, though her heart was racing with a wild hope. "If you left," Leander said quietly, "you'd take the heart right out of me." Amelia stared up at him, scarcely daring to believe what she was hearing. "Leander, I know it's too soon," he went on hurriedly. "We barely know each other, but I feel like I've been waiting for you my whole life. When I saw you on that auction block, something in me just knew what?" she breathed. "That you were meant to be here, with me." His eyes searched hers in the moonlight. "I'm not asking for promises, Amelia. I'm just asking you not to run. Give us a chance to face this together." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I'm so afraid," she admitted. "Not for myself, but for you, for what Hargrove might do." "We're stronger together than apart," Leander insisted. "The whole community is behind us, and I—" He hesitated, then seemed to find his courage. "I love you, Amelia O'Connor. I think I have since the moment I first saw you," the words she'd been longing to hear, yet afraid to hope for. "I love you too," she whispered. "That's why I was trying to leave, to protect you." Leander smiled, a beautiful, tender smile that made her heart soar. "Then stay," he said simply. "Stay and let me protect you instead." He lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, but Amelia rose on her tiptoes to meet him. Their lips touched, gentle at first, then with growing passion as they gave themselves over to the feelings they'd been fighting. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Leander rested his forehead against hers. "Don't ever try to leave me again," he murmured. I won't, she promised. Whatever comes, we'll face it together. They returned to the cabin hand in hand, the night suddenly full of promise despite the dangers that still lurked. As they reached the door, however, the distant sound of galloping hooves made them both freeze. Someone's coming, Leander said, instantly alert. Fast. He hurried her inside, then grabbed his rifle and stepped back out onto the porch. Amelia watched anxiously through the window as a single rider approached at speed. It's Thomas Miller, Leander called over his shoulder, recognizing the lanky form of John Miller's eldest son. The youth reined in his lathered horse, breathing hard. Mr. Dawson, Pa sent me to warn you. Sheriff Thompson and a posse left town an hour ago, headed this way. Hargrove's with them. How many? Leander asked sharply. 6, counting the sheriff and Hargrove. Thomas's voice was urgent. Pa says you should head for high ground. He and the others will try to slow them down, maybe redirect them, but you need to go now. Leander nodded grimly. Tell your pa we appreciate the warning, and Thomas ride careful going home. The boy nodded and wheeled his horse around, galloping back the way he had come. Leander strode back into the cabin, his expression determined. We need to move quickly, he told Amelia. Grab the packs we prepared, I'll saddle the horses. Amelia's hands shook as she gathered their things, but she forced herself to be methodical, making sure they had everything they would need. By the time she joined Leander outside, he had both horses saddled and ready. We'll take the western trail, he said as he helped her mount. It's less direct but harder to track, especially in the dark. They set off at a steady pace, Leander leading the way through the moonlit prairie. Amelia glanced back once at the cabin, wondering if she would ever see it again. They rode for perhaps an hour, following game trails and creek beds to obscure their tracks before Leander suddenly pulled up short, listening. What is it? Amelia whispered, fear clutching at her throat. Horses, he replied quietly, coming from the north. He led them quickly into a dense stand of cottonwoods. Stay low, stay quiet, he instructed, dismounting and helping her down. They led the horses deeper into the trees where the shadows were thickest. Soon, Amelia could hear what had alerted Leander, the steady drum of hooves and the occasional clink of metal or creak of leather. The posse was closer than they had thought, and coming from an unexpected direction. They must have split up to cover more ground, Leander whispered, his mouth close to her ear. We need to change course. They waited until the sounds had faded before cautiously emerging from their hiding place. Leander studied the stars for orientation. This way, he decided, pointing southeast. We'll cut through Jorgensen's land. He'll cover for us if need be. They rode more quickly now, the urgency of their situation pressing on them. The terrain grew increasingly rugged as they left the prairie behind and entered the rolling hills that marked the eastern edge of Leander's property. Dawn was just breaking when they reached the hunting cabin, nestled in a small, sheltered valley with a spring-fed stream nearby. It was simple but solid, one room with a stone fireplace, a small table and chairs, a narrow bed, and shelves stocked with basic provisions. We should be safe here for a while, Leander said as they unsaddled the horses and led them into a small lean-to shelter beside the cabin. The valley's hard to spot unless you know exactly where to look. Inside, he quickly built a fire to take the chill off the morning air. Amelia sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed by exhaustion and the reality of their situation. What happens now? She asked. Leander sat beside her, taking her hand in his. We wait. Let Reverend Parker contact his lawyer cousin, give the community time to talk sense into Sheriff Thompson. And if that doesn't work, he squeezed her hand, then we keep moving. I have friends farther west who would help us. We'd have to leave everything behind, Amelia said sadly. Your ranch, the school, things can be replaced, Leander said firmly. You can't. The tenderness in his voice made her eyes fill with tears. I never meant for any of this to happen. I know. He gently wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. None of this is your fault, Amelia, isn't it? If I hadn't been so naive, so desperate to believe in that teaching position. Hargrove and his kind prey on decent people, Leander said. The fault lies with him, not you. Amelia leaned against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his solid presence. When you came into that saloon, she said quietly, I thought you were just another bidder at first, But then you said those words, my heart bids higher, and something in me just knew. Knew what? He asked, echoing her question from earlier that night. She smiled up at him. That you were different, that you saw me as a person, not a possession. Leander's arm slipped around her waist. From the moment I laid eyes on you, I couldn't look away. It wasn't just that you didn't belong in that place, though you surely didn't. It was something more. His free hand came up to touch her face. Something I can't explain, but I knew I had to get you out of there, whatever the cost. And now look what it's cost you, she said sadly. Worth every penny, he assured her, bending to place a gentle kiss on her forehead. Get some rest, Amelia. I'll keep watch. Despite her intention to stay awake to help keep vigil, exhaustion claimed her quickly. She dozed fitfully, waking every time Leander moved to check outside or tend the fire. By midday, she gave up on proper sleep and joined him at the small table where he was cleaning his rifle. Any sign of pursuit? She asked. He shook his head. Nothing yet. But they'll be searching systematically. It's just a matter of time before they think to check here. How long can we stay? A day, maybe two, he replied. Then we should move on. He hesitated. Amelia, there's something I need to ask you. Something in his tone made her pulse quicken. Yes. If things go badly, if we have to leave Nebraska territory altogether, would you? He took a deep breath. Would you still want to stay with me? As my wife, Amelia stared at him, taken aback by the unexpected proposal. Your wife, Leander looked suddenly uncertain. I know it's fast and hardly the romantic setting a woman deserves for such a question. But I love you, Amelia, and if we're going to start fresh somewhere else, I want to do it properly, as husband and wife. Joy bloomed in her chest, bright and unexpected. Yes, she said, reaching across the table to take his hand. I would be honored to be your wife, Leander Dawson, wherever we end up. His face lit with such happiness that it made her breath catch. He stood, drawing her up into his arms, and kissed her with a passion that left her dizzy. If only we had a preacher, he murmured against her lips. Reverend Parker would have done it, Amelia sighed, resting her head against his chest. When this is over, Leander promised, we'll have a proper wedding, with the whole community there to celebrate with us. The optimism in his voice gave her hope. You really believe we'll be able to go back? I have to, he said simply. That land has been in my family for 15 years. I won't let Hargrove take it. They spent the day in quiet companionship, making plans for both possibilities, returning to the ranch or heading farther west. As the sun began to set, Leander suggested they risk a small cooking fire to prepare a hot meal. We could use the strength, he reasoned. And darkness will hide the smoke. They had just finished their simple supper of beans and bacon when Patch, who had accompanied them on their flight, began to growl low in his throat. Leander was instantly alert, reaching for his rifle. Stay inside, he whispered to Amelia. Douse the lamp. Heart pounding, she did as instructed, then crept to the window, peering out into the gathering darkness. At first, she saw nothing. Then a flicker of movement caught her eye, shadowy figures approaching on foot, leading their horses. Leander, she breathed. They're here. He joined her at the window, his expression grim as he counted the approaching men. 4 of them, he murmured, including the sheriff by the look of it. What do we do? Leander considered for a moment. We can try to slip out the back, but they've probably surrounded the cabin. Or we can stand our ground. I don't want anyone hurt because of me, Amelia said firmly. Nor do I, Leander agreed, but I won't let them take you back to Hargrove. He took her hands in his. Trust me, she nodded without hesitation. Then follow my lead. He moved to the door, rifle in hand, but pointed at the floor. Sheriff Thompson, he called out, I know you're out there. There was a moment of silence, then a gruff voice responded. Dawson, you're a wanted man. Come out with your hands up and bring the woman. Let's talk this through first, Leander countered. Man to man. There's nothing to discuss, the sheriff called back. I have a warrant for both your arrests, a warrant based on lies, Leander replied. You know as well as I do that Hargrove's dealings aren't legal. A different voice cut in deeper, more authoritative, Hargrove himself. The law's on my side, Dawson. The girl signed a contract and took my money. That makes her my property until her debt is paid. She signed nothing willingly, Leander shot back. And a person can't be property. This isn't the South before the war, Hargrove. Enough talk, the sheriff interrupted. Come out now or we're coming in shooting, Leander turned to Amelia, his expression resolute. When I open the door, stay behind me. No matter what happens, don't let them separate us. She nodded, steeling herself for whatever was to come. Leander opened the door slowly, keeping his rifle lowered but ready. We're coming out, he called. No need for shooting. They stepped onto the small porch, Amelia just behind Leander's protective form. In the fading light, she could make out 4 men: Sheriff Thompson, a deputy she didn't recognize, Hargrove, and one of his ranch hands. Smart move, Dawson, the sheriff said, his own rifle trained on Leander. Now hand over the girl and your weapons. I can't do that, Sheriff, Leander replied calmly. Miss O'Connor is under my protection, and I have reason to believe she wouldn't be safe in Mr. Hargrove's custody. Hargrove sneered. She's not yours to protect, Dawson. She belongs to me fair and square. No human being belongs to another, Amelia said, stepping slightly to the side so she could be seen. I was brought west under false pretenses, imprisoned, and put up for auction against my will. If anyone has broken the law, it's you, Mr. Hargrove. The sheriff looked uncomfortable. That's a serious accusation, miss. It's the truth, she insisted. And there are others who can testify to similar treatment. Women lured west with promises of legitimate work, only to find themselves trapped and sold to the highest bidder. Lies, Hargrove bellowed. She's trying to avoid her legal obligations, if her story is true, the deputy said slowly. Then there was no legal contract to break. Human trafficking is a federal crime even out here. Hargrove's face flushed with anger. Since when do you question my word, Jenkins? Remember who pays your extra wages. The sheriff's expression hardened at this inadvertent admission of corruption. Careful, Hargrove. That sounds mighty close to admitting you've been bribing my deputies. This is getting us nowhere, Hargrove growled. He drew his pistol suddenly, aiming it at Leander. I'm taking what's mine one way or another. Several things happened at once. The sheriff shouted a warning. Leander pushed Amelia back toward the cabin door. Patch lunged forward with a snarl. And the sound of galloping hooves filled the clearing as riders burst from the trees. Drop your weapons, John Miller's voice rang out. Behind him rode Thomas, Reverend Parker, and at least a dozen other men from the community, all armed. Hargrove whirled, his pistol now pointed at the newcomers. This doesn't concern you, Miller. When you threaten our neighbors, it concerns all of us, John replied steadily. Now lower that gun before someone gets hurt. Sheriff Thompson looked from Hargrove to the mounted men, clearly reassessing the situation. Maybe we should all calm down, he suggested, lowering his own rifle. Seems there's more to this story than I was told. There's nothing to discuss, Hargrove shouted, his control visibly slipping. I paid good money for that woman and Dawson stole her from me. Listen to yourself, Reverend Parker said, dismounting and stepping forward. You're admitting to trafficking human beings. Even out here, that's not just illegal, it's evil. I received this today, he continued, pulling a folded paper from his coat pocket. It's a telegram from the U.S. Marshal's office in Lincoln. They've been building a case against you for months, Hargrove. Testimonies from women who escaped your establishments, evidence of bribery, coercion, and human trafficking. The sheriff took the telegram, reading it with growing alarm. This says a federal marshal is on his way to Nebraska City, he said, looking up at Hargrove with dawning realization. You've been playing me for a fool. It's all lies, Hargrove insisted, but his voice had lost its confidence. Why don't we all return to town and sort this out properly? Reverend Parker suggested. With all parties present, including Miss O'Connor, to give their testimony, the sheriff nodded slowly. That seems reasonable. He turned to Leander. If you and the lady are willing to come peacefully, I'll guarantee your safety until this matter is resolved. Before Leander could respond, Hargrove let out a roar of fury. No, he raised his pistol again, aiming directly at Amelia. If I can't have her, no one will, the shot rang out, echoing across the valley, but it wasn't from Hargrove's gun. The cattle baron staggered backward, clutching his shoulder, his unfired pistol falling to the ground. Behind him stood his own ranch hand, a smoking rifle in his hands. I'm sorry, boss, the man said quietly. I signed on to herd cattle, not kidnap women or kill innocent folks. Hargrove collapsed to his knees, blood seeping between his fingers. "You'll hang for this, Preston," he gasped. "I don't think so," Sheriff Thompson said, moving forward to secure Hargrove's fallen weapon. "Looks to me like you were about to commit murder. Preston here just prevented it." He glanced at the ranch hand. "Though your timing could have been better. Next time, speak up before it comes to shooting." "Yes, sir," Preston nodded, looking relieved. The tension in the clearing dissipated as Hargrove was disarmed and his wound tended to. It wasn't life-threatening, but it would keep him subdued for the journey back to town. Leander kept his arm firmly around Amelia's waist as they watched the proceedings. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. "I am now," she assured him, leaning into his strength. "Is it really over?" "I think so," he said, surveying the scene before them. "Hargrove's finished in these parts once the federal marshal arrives." John Miller approached them, relief evident on his weathered face. "You two had us worried," he said. "Glad we got here in time. How did you know where to find us?" Leander asked. John smiled. "Martha thought to ask Sarah where you might go if trouble came. She remembered the hunting cabin from when you two first settled here." "We're grateful for your help," Amelia told him sincerely. "All of you," she added, looking around at the gathered men who had ridden out to their defense. "Like Martha says, we look after our own," John replied simply. Reverend Parker joined them, his kind face serious. The marshal's telegram mentioned other women who might still be held against their will in Hargrove's establishments. "Once he arrives, I expect there will be quite a reckoning." "Good," Leander said firmly. "That man's caused enough suffering." "Well, now," the Reverend's expression brightened. "I hear congratulations might be in order. Martha mentioned something about wedding plans." Amelia blushed as Leander's arm tightened around her waist. "We were hoping you might perform the ceremony," Leander confirmed, "once this business is properly resolved." "It would be my honor," Reverend Parker said warmly. "Though I must say, I've rarely seen two people more suited to one another, despite the unusual circumstances of your meeting." As they prepared to return to town, a much larger, friendlier group than the posse that had pursued them, Leander pulled Amelia aside for a moment of privacy. "I meant what I said back in the cabin," he told her, his eyes serious. "I want to marry you, Amelia O'Connor. Not because of circumstance or necessity, but because I love you." Amelia reached up to touch his face, her heart full to bursting. "And I meant my answer. I love you, Leander Dawson, and I would be proud to be your wife." He smiled, a smile that transformed his entire face and made her fall in love all over again. "Then let's go home, Miss O'Connor. We have a school to build and a life to start." The return journey to Nebraska City was peaceful. Hargrove, his wound tended by the deputy who had some medical training, was kept under guard. The federal marshal arrived the following day, bringing with him a stack of sworn testimonies from women who had escaped Hargrove's clutches in the past. In the face of overwhelming evidence, the local charges against Leander and Amelia were quickly dismissed. Hargrove was arrested on federal charges and transported to Lincoln to await trial. True to Reverend Parker's prediction, the raid on Hargrove's establishments in Nebraska City freed 7 women who had been held against their will, awaiting auction, or already forced into prostitution. 2 of them, it turned out, had been brought west under the same false promise of teaching positions that had lured Amelia. The community rallied around these women, offering them safe places to stay and honest work while they decided what to do next. 2 chose to return east to their families. The others, with no homes to return to, opted to remain in the territory. One of them, a bright young woman named Elizabeth, had actually been trained as a teacher before her capture. When Amelia learned this, she immediately invited Elizabeth to join her in establishing the school, recognizing that the growing number of children in the area could benefit from 2 teachers. Work on the schoolhouse resumed with renewed energy. By early October, it was complete, a sturdy building with large windows for light, a proper wood stove for heat, and desks crafted by the fathers of the children who would use them. On a bright, crisp Saturday in mid-October, the entire community gathered for a double celebration: the official opening of the Nebraska City Valley School and the wedding of Leander Dawson and Amelia O'Connor. The schoolhouse had been decorated with autumn leaves and late wildflowers. The new blackboard bore the words "Education is the passport to the future. For tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today," in Amelia's careful handwriting. Amelia wore a simple white dress that Martha Miller and the other women had helped her make, with Sarah's blue ribbon at her waist in honor of the sister-in-law she would never meet. Leander, standing tall and proud at the front of the room, wore his best suit, his normally unruly dark hair tamed for the occasion. Reverend Parker conducted a simple but heartfelt ceremony. When he pronounced them husband and wife, the cheer that went up from the assembled community nearly lifted the new roof. The celebration that followed lasted well into the evening with food and music and dancing. As darkness fell, lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the festivities. Later, as they danced together under the stars, Leander held Amelia close. "Happy Mrs. Dawson," he murmured against her hair. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied, leaning back to look up at him. "If someone had told me 3 months ago that I would find love, a purpose, and a community all the way out here in Nebraska territory, I would never have believed them." "Fate works in mysterious ways," he said, spinning her gently to the fiddle music. "When I walked into that saloon and saw you on that stage, something told me my life was about to change forever." "My heart bids higher," Amelia quoted softly. "I'll never forget those words as long as I live. And I'll spend the rest of my days making sure you never regret accepting that bid," Leander promised, bending to kiss her beneath the star-filled prairie sky. 5 years later, Amelia stood on the porch of their expanded ranch house, watching as Leander taught their 3-year-old son, Thomas, to ride his first pony. Their infant daughter, Sarah, slept peacefully in her cradle beside Amelia, her tiny face a perfect blend of both parents. The Nebraska City Valley School had flourished, now boasting over 30 students of various ages. Elizabeth had married John Miller's foreman and continued teaching alongside Amelia until the arrival of little Thomas had necessitated Amelia cutting back her hours. Hargrove had been convicted and sentenced to 15 years in a federal penitentiary. His properties had been sold off, his empire dismantled. Some justice, at least, had been served for his many victims. As Leander lifted Thomas down from the pony and turned to walk back toward the house, Amelia felt the same flutter in her heart that had been there from the beginning. 5 years of marriage had only deepened her love for this steady, honorable man who had saved her in more ways than one. "Mama." Thomas called excitedly. "Did you see? I stayed on all by myself, I saw," she assured him with a smile. "You're going to be as fine a horseman as your father." Leander mounted the porch steps, swinging their son up onto his shoulders. "He's a natural," he said proudly. "Just needs to grow a bit more before we try a full-sized horse." "Plenty of time for that," Amelia said, reaching out to smooth Thomas's wild, dark hair, so like his father's. Leander leaned in to kiss her, then peered into the cradle at their sleeping daughter. "She's the image of you," he murmured. "Poor child," Amelia teased. "Beautiful child," Leander corrected, his eyes soft with love as he looked from the baby to her mother. "Just like her mama." As they stood together on the porch of the home they had built, surrounded by the family they had created, Amelia reflected on the strange, wonderful journey that had brought her to this moment. From terror to triumph, from captivity to freedom, from loneliness to love. All because a quiet cowboy had looked at her across a crowded saloon and declared that his heart bid higher.